Hi everyone! So today we're going to review the 3 rhetorical appeals that were introduced last week. And as you may have guessed, we're going to do it Harry Potter style, because why not? So, as you may remember, the rhetorical appeals are ethos, credibility, pathos or pathos, emotion, and logos, logic and reason. If you're having trouble remembering which is which, they share roots with some words you may know. Ethos, think ethics. Pathos, think sympathy or empathy. And for logos, think logic. We're going to go a bit more in depth with each of these and talk about what they mean, how you can identify them, and how you can use them in your own persuasive ventures. Okay, so let's start with ethos. From the exercises we did last week, it seemed this was the appeal that the class overall had the hardest time identifying and using in their own writing. So let's spend a little extra time on this one today. Ethos is an appeal to character, credibility, and authority. Ethos is all about the author or speaker trying to establish that they're someone who should be trusted to speak about their subject. So authors can build this trust in a couple of ways. They can do this by showing that they're an authority and that they have credentials. They can also do this by using expert testimony and reliable sources, or by approaching their subject with fairness. Okay, so authority or credentials. This is when the author has first-hand knowledge, experience, or expertise about a subject. For example, I have a degree from Hogwarts, or as a doctor, I see this problem a lot. They're telling you what experience or what knowledge they have that makes them qualified to speak about the subject at hand. Whether or not the author has authority of their own, they can also build credibility by relying on the authority of others. In other words, using expert testimony. This can mean using information from specialists, like doctors or scientists. For example, 4 out of 5 dentists recommend chocolate frogs. Sometimes this authority figure can be a celebrity or athlete, like when Taylor Swift is in a Diet Coke commercial, or if someone said, Victor Crumb only drinks butterbeer before his Quidditch matches. They're relying on the trustworthiness of these figures, either the specialist or Victor Crumb, the athlete, so that you know that you can trust what they're saying. It can also mean including information from regular people who have experienced something firsthand, like in those Febreze commercials that are all about using real people and not actors, so you can see that their product really works. Closely related to our last slide, another way to build credibility is to use reliable sources. Not all sources are created equal. An audience is far more likely to trust someone who cites information from a peer-reviewed journal than someone who cites, say, Wikipedia or Rita Skeeter as their source. Another very important aspect of credibility is fairness. Your audience needs to know not only have you done your research, but you've done it in a fair and unbiased way. If the audience feels that you're ignoring facts or other arguments just to make your point, they're less likely to trust you. This is why it's important to do things like acknowledge the counterargument. Next, we're going to talk about pathos, emotion. So again, pathos is all about evoking an emotional response. And this appeal can be to all different kinds of emotions. It could elicit pity, hope, fear, patriotism, anger. The list goes on. This is the appeal that can bring the argument to life. It can be what makes the issue seem real and important to the audience. Because talking about an oil spill or a war is very different from seeing or imagining the impacts of those things. So how do authors elicit this emotional response? They do this by appealing to the audience's imagination, values, or beliefs. And this can be done with words, pictures, body language, and/or tone. So here is an example of pathos. We have a picture of Dobby, this adorable house elf, and he's looking kind of sad and a bit dirty. His clothes are all messy and basically a pillowcase. And yet he has this hopeful look on his face, thinking about the idea of freedom. And to help this appeal to pathos, we have the caption, "Free the house elves." So the use of the word free here has a lot of really strong emotions associated with it that work towards this emotional appeal. And last, but certainly not least, we have logos, the appeal to logic or reason. So logos is all about the merits of the text itself. It's when the authors use strong reasons and evidence. It's when they explain the approach or the process. And this often involves facts, statistics, experiments, analogies, or authority voices. Let's review these 3 rhetorical devices with a theme-appropriate example. Logos is kind of like Hermione. She's super smart, always logical, and usually the voice of reason among the 3. Pathos is like Ron. We can always count on him to have a strong emotional response. Just think about whenever he sees spiders. Harry is like Ethos. He's a trustworthy dude. He's got lots of first-hand experience and credentials, since he's the kid who first defeated Voldemort and then faced him like literally every year. He's also a bit of a celebrity because of all this, the boy who lived, which makes him a perfect example of ethos. And just like Harry, Hermione, and Ron, the golden trio, the rhetorical appeals work best as a team. For this reason, the rhetorical appeals can often be referred to as the rhetorical triangle, and are drawn like this, with one on each point of an equilateral triangle, to show that they're best used in balance with one another. Let's think about an example that you should all be familiar with. Recall from last week the TED Talk, How Boredom Can Lead to Your Most Interesting Ideas. Let's take a look at some of the ways that Manoush Zomorodi uses these 3 appeals in her TED Talk. So, starting with ethos. One of the first things she tells us in her TED Talk is that she's a journalist and the creator of Bored and Brilliant. She also shares a lot of her personal experiences, being a first-time mother and experiencing boredom, and the creativity that came along with it, and then losing that creativity as she started to use her phone more and more, and all the other personal experience that she shares. She also uses a lot of scientific sources and testimony from scientists and everyday people. I think she even has a celebrity in there somewhere. And pathos. Think about all the times that she uses this first-hand experience, both her own and the voice clips from participants. So not only does her content elicit emotion, but also her tone and her body language as she gets so excited to share this information and talk about how using technology less or using it more purposefully can open up your mind to creativity and productivity in a way it hasn't before. She also then has those voice clips from participants, and we get to hear and see how they've been moved by this experience and all of the emotions that are associated with that challenge. She also uses logos quite a bit. So not only does she have all sorts of data and experts, she's got statistics and brain scans and the works. She also uses a very logical structure. In order to achieve her purpose, she breaks it down and takes us step by step, because there are a couple things that she has to convince us of before we can accept her overall message. So first, she has to convince us that boredom leads to creativity, and then that technology prevents boredom, although I'm sure most of us would already agree on that one. And then that technology interferes with creativity by preventing us from being bored. So she breaks down her argument like this, and she takes it step by step so that ultimately we can accept that message of if we want to be more creative and if we want to be more productive, we have to put aside our technology and let ourselves be bored at different times during the day. All right, so now that we've broken down Harry Potter and the TED Talk for rhetorical appeals and reviewed what those looked like, that's pretty much it for me today. But if you have any questions at all about ethos, pathos, logos, or anything else really, send me an email, lasargent@sayersd.org. Probably know that by now, but if you don't, it's also on Google Classroom. So email me with questions and have an awesome day.